Hey film fans, welcome to CinePro, your ultimate hub for all movie recaps. From heartwarming classics to the latest blockbusters, our movie begins with Barnes and Paxton, who work as missionaries in the Church of the Last Jesus, which belongs to the Mormon sect. This is a religious sect founded by Joseph Smith in 1830 after his claims of prophecy and divine revelation. The sect's teachings were revealed through divine inspiration. We see them discussing their joining the church, and Paxton starts telling her story, saying, "I watched a daring movie, I don't remember where, about a boy and a girl in a relationship, and someone was filming them. I thought the girl's behavior was very shameful, and there was a force draining her soul from her body. Her dignity was entirely lost, and at that moment I thought, wow, this could be my life. I was convinced I could do something similar to make a lot of money. But then I reconsidered and realized how impactful this was. I felt like I found a path to faith because we have souls that cannot be defiled. This is our divine composition." Barnes asks her, "Do you watch such movies?" She replies, "Of course not. I've never done that," contrary to what you might think. Barnes reassures her, saying, "It's okay, by the way." Paxton insists she doesn't do that and asks, "You haven't told me your opinion on this matter." Barnes realizes she's asking about her opinion on daring movies and says, "No, I meant to ask how you found the path to faith that led you to this sect." Barnes responds, "I don't remember because I never thought about it." Paxton says, "It doesn't matter. The important thing is that you're convinced we're right." Barnes seems hesitant and not entirely convinced but decides not to speak. They continue walking to reach the house of someone who contacted their church, expressing interest in learning more about their sect. The road appears difficult, but they are convinced it's worth it. Paxton notices a group of girls taking pictures in the street and seems to admire them, finding their behavior charming. The girls approach them and ask to take pictures with Paxton. She agrees immediately and appears happy, but suddenly the girls mock her and bully her. A while later, they reach Reed's house. Paxton still seems upset about the girls' behavior and asks Barnes, "Why do people see me as weird?" Barnes replies, "It doesn't matter how people see you. What matters is that you're truly beautiful." They reach the door of the house and start preparing how to introduce themselves. At that moment, a storm and heavy rain begin. Reed opens the door and welcomes them. They introduce themselves, and Paxton says they were nearby and decided to come to talk to him because they heard he was interested in learning more about the Church of the Last Jesus. Barnes takes a booklet out of her bag and tells him it contains information that might be useful to him. He says he already has a similar book but doesn't mind having another. Paxton begins speaking quickly, as if reciting something she memorized. Reed suggests they come inside because it's raining. Barnes feels embarrassed and asks if he has a roommate because they can't enter his house if he's alone. He says he doesn't have a roommate but does have a wife inside. He invites them in and asks if they like pie because his wife is baking one now. He excuses himself to bring the food. As they enter, they start looking around the house. They notice a picture of Reed's wife, and Barnes notices a butterfly trapped inside the house. At this moment, Reed returns with a candle and a soft drink. He tells them his wife is shy, but the pie will be ready soon. Barnes insists that his wife should be in the same room with them. He reassures her that she will come out soon and says it's good for a person to be religious. Paxton laughs and says, "Our role here is done." Barnes starts discussing faith, expressing her belief that faith fades over time. Paxton tries to use a gentle approach to discuss the sect, asking, "Are you ready for the path chosen for you?" Reed says, "It's very important for a person to find the faith they can embrace as the true religion." He explains that he has been searching and always asking, "What is the true religion?" Paxton interrupts and says, "The great Reverend always tells us that priority goes to those who ask a lot of questions and show curiosity, which is good because Joseph Smith was curious. He joined several sects before discovering none of them suited him, so he founded this sect." Reed responds, "As far as I know, Joseph was visited by an angel named Moroni, who brought him tablets made of gold inscribed with writings, which were translated into the sect's holy book. He brings out the book he keeps, surprising Paxton because he has read more than them. She asks him how he feels after reading the book. At that moment, Barnes says, "I'm starting to smell the pie." Reed asks, "What do you think the pie is made of?" Paxton guesses, "Blueberry pie." He tells her she guessed correctly. He then asks Barnes how her father died and whether she tried to communicate with him in the afterlife or saw any signs. She becomes upset and says no. She starts touching an old scar on her arm. Reed notices her sadness and apologizes for reminding her of her father. After a while, part of the house's electricity goes out due to the rain. Reed apologizes, explaining that the house is old and affected by the weather. He begins telling them about his long journey to find the true and only religion. When he senses he's pressuring them with his words, Barnes asks about his wife and requests to meet her. She appears anxious and insists on meeting his wife. Reed tells them his wife is ready and wants wants to meet them. He asks them to follow him inside. At this moment, Barnes pretends to receive a call from the Relief Society, claiming they need them urgently. Reed goes inside, leaving them alone. They decide to take the opportunity to sneak out, but they discover the door is locked. They try multiple times to open it, but fail. They search for any exit, but find all the windows are too small to escape through. They contact their church to ask for help, but there is no mobile network coverage, and they suspect it's because of the storm. At that moment, they try to reassure each other that everything will be fine, but then the electricity cuts off completely. They decide to check the paths Red came through and enter the library room, where they meet Red. Barnes tells him, "We've taken up a lot of your time, and we really enjoyed talking with you, but we just received a call, and we need to leave immediately." Red responds, of course, I won't hold you up any longer," adding, "It's a shame. We were just about to start talking." He asks them to put on their jackets and discovers that he searched their pockets, took Barnes' bike key, and left it in Paxton's pocket. Barnes asks him to help them and open the door because it's stuck. He assures them that the door is actually open. Paxton tells him she tried to open it but couldn't. He explains that the doors operate on a timer and that when they started talking, time slipped away and the door closed automatically. He says, "If you're determined to leave, you can exit through the back door." This increases their anxiety. Barnes asks, "So you can't open the door we came in through?" He replies, "Unfortunately, the door won't open until morning." Paxton pleads with him to let them out. He apologizes but insists they can exit through the other door and assures them it's safe. Barnes questions why there would be a door on a timer, to which he says he understands their concern and reassures them they can leave through the other door. He tells them to take their time and make the decision that suits them best. He adds, "I want you to know that I didn't pressure you, and there was no need to make up an excuse to leave, claiming you received a call." Barnes insists, "Believe me, it's not just an excuse. We really did receive a call and need to leave." Red then points out that they probably didn't realize when they entered that the house is made of metal. Barnes asks what he means, and he explains that the metal blocks mobile network signals, which is why they didn't receive any calls. He adds, "It's no problem. I just wanted to clarify that you don't need to make up excuses to leave. You can go straight away." Barnes asks which door will take them out. He tells them to choose their preferred door. They become frustrated because they obviously don't know which door leads out. Paxton suggests he call his wife to come greet them and guide them to the exit. He agrees, but asks them one question first. "Are you convinced my wife is in the house, despite all the evidence to the contrary?" He points out that the candle they saw earlier wasn't lit, there was no oven, and no one was baking a pie, implying they were looking for a lie because he is an old man. Barnes says they should just take the back door, but he insists they stay and opens the doors in front of them. They discover they are entering the basement, which is very dark. At this moment, they realize they are late for the time they were supposed to return. Red tells Barnes, "You must realize we're starting to feel a chill." He advises them to leave because the abbot knows they're here. Paxton mentions that someone else saw them entering, and Red responds that they've strayed far from their original purpose. Paxton accuses him of lying to them, and he asks if they want his help. They are surprised by his words, look at each other, and think for a moment. He tells them to choose their preferred door to leave, and explains that he said this because it's something they need to think about carefully to make the right decision. He asks them again if they want his help. Barnes says, of course. He approaches her, stands by the door behind her, and says, "It's a simple choice, but it can't be made lightly. You need to think carefully and then decide." He leaves them to change the record, and Paxton takes the opportunity to write on her phone screen to Barnes, "Let's run." At that moment, Red returns and asks if they've heard this song before. Paxton replies, "Definitely not, because you just played it now." He tells them, "I think you've heard it more than once, but now let's return to our main discussion." He asks if they believe in doctrines. Barnes responds, "Of course we believe in God." He says, "All right, there are three main monotheistic religions: Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. These are known as the Big Three." He begins to explain his perspective, saying that Judaism is the original version, Christianity is the most widespread, and Islam is the newest and most popular. He asks them to give him the Book of Mormon, which they don't have, and says they'll return to it later. He explains that Mormonism appeared 800 years later and compares it to a regionally popular game in America. He tells them that all religions are reiterations of the same source because they all share events and characters, but present different meanings and perspectives. He says Judaism has fewer followers because it doesn't have missionaries like them, who knock on people's doors to sit with them and sell an unproductive idea. He tells them he has an idea he wants to share and sell, and they will market it. He turns off the lights and begins showing them pictures and paintings, expressing his objections to sacred texts. Meanwhile, Jordan is looking for Barnes and Paxton, asking about them in the houses they were supposed to visit. The scene returns to Red, explaining his perspective, saying he doesn't believe in these narratives. He turns on the lights and asks if they are afraid. He admits he is also afraid, but can say it out loud. He writes faith on one door, saying that if there is a God, he must be watching us when we make mistakes, which is terrifying to him. He writes disbelief on the other door, saying the alternative is that we are just ants on a rock floating in cosmic space with no purpose, but we hope to achieve eternal life, which he also finds terrifying. He tells them that since they are believers and trust Jordan, the 15th president of the church, they should use their faith to choose the right door between disbelief and faith. He believes believes all religions are fabricated, just like the church they represent, as he doesn't believe in any sacredness. He leaves them and exits. Barnes begins gathering the books scattered on the floor and exits. She tells him she wants to know what will happen before choosing a door. He replies that he can't answer her. She has to make a choice. Paxton tells him he's discussing many important things, which proves his intelligence because he managed to convince them they don't need to learn anymore. She decides to choose the door of disbelief to leave, heading towards the marked door to exit. She tries to convince Barnes to stay with her, and it becomes clear that they must follow his instructions. Barnes assures her that he won't let them leave because he hasn't admitted what he wants from them. It appears she is improving and wants to confirm something specific based on their choice of the door they will open. She says to him, "You think this is just a game? What is it that you want to confirm based on their choice of the door they will open?" Barnes responds to Reed, "Do you think this is just a game? What were you looking for, and what did you find? If you're thinking correctly, then what matters now is what we believe in. The long lecture you gave with all the examples you used was just a way to attack our beliefs. You just want to convince us that the story of Christ isn't true. I didn't think my perspective aligned with disbelief and faith because I feel the examples you gave ignored many important things." She tells him, "That's why I don't think it's important what I believe in." She asks Paxton if she believes in the existence of God, and Paxton replies, "Of course, yes." She asks them to be sincere and honest in their faith and let God decide what happens to them when they choose the door of safety. She opens the door and steps in, with Paxton following behind her. Reed thanks her for her guidance and words. When they go down, Reed observes them, and Paxton asks him if he won't come with them. He ignores her and shuts the door, leaving them in complete darkness. Barnes decides to use the phone to navigate through the darkness and reassures Paxton, asking her to move slowly. They encounter another door, open it, and enter a dark, frightening room with a dilapidated ceiling leaking rainwater. Barnes starts looking for an exit, and fear becomes evident on Paxton's face as she worries they might remain in this room forever. Barnes tells her, "This man is very clever. He knew someone would come looking for us, so he forced us to change our location to kill us." She tries to climb on the chair and table in the room to reach the window and suggests to Paxton that if he tries to engage with them again, they should talk to him and make him think. She believes they might not be able to physically threaten him, but could threaten him intellectually. She reaches the edge of the window and discovers it's sealed with iron. She quickly comes down when they hear his footsteps. They return everything to its place and cover the fallen wood from the ceiling. She gives Paxton a sharp object and tells her if anything happens, she should stab him in the neck because he is focused on and watching her all the time. She tells her they should have a secret code word between them. If she says it, she should stab him immediately. At that moment, the door opens slowly, and a barefoot woman with her face covered and holding a lamp enters. She places a pie on the table, takes a few steps back, and clasps her hands behind her back. She sits silently and displays strange behavior. Meanwhile, they hear the song Reed was playing earlier, as if it were coming from a primitive microphone. Reed starts speaking to them through the phone and is asked by Barnes who the woman is. He tells her, "This is my prophet." They hear the woman muttering strange words and moving toward them. Reed tells them, "I invited you here today because I performed a miracle. This miracle is the greatest proof that all other religions are false. I found it an opportunity to document and witness the truth of this miracle." At that moment, the woman removes the cover from her face and starts eating the pie in a bizarre manner. Reed tells them the pie contains ingredients from poisonous plants and that the prophet with them will die from eating it. After a while, they will witness the miracle because she will come back to life. At that moment, the strange being with Paxton and Barnes shows signs of distress and her head falls onto the pie. Reed asks them to check her pulse and insists they follow his instructions to determine whether her heart is still beating or has stopped. He asks them to lift her head to confirm. Paxton places her hand on the woman's neck and is terrified to discover she's still alive, but Reed demands they admit she is dead. Out of fear, they lie and tell him she is dead, even though she isn't. He then asks them to confirm if she is breathing or not. They tell him she isn't breathing. He tells them to wait a few minutes and watch her return to life, saying she will breathe again in her second life. They become increasingly frightened. At that moment, the doorbell rings. Reed decides to go see who is at the door and moves quickly. They try to look under the door and agree to scream so whoever is at the main door can hear them. Reed returns and blocks the room door to prevent their voices from reaching outside. He steps out and it turns out to be Jordan at the door. Jordan asks him about the two girls, but Reed lies, saying he hasn't had any visitors in days. Meanwhile, Barnes suggests they pull the carpet to reach the matches and start a fire to attract the attention of whoever is at the door. At the same time, Jordan questions Reed about how no one came when he was the one who contacted the church to inquire about them. Reed reassures him that no one visited and suggests he use his phone to call the police. Jordan thanks him and says he will search elsewhere, convinced they aren't far. Reed returns, not noticing they are pulling the carpet. They carefully continue their plan, managing to reach the matchbox, but unfortunately, it's too big to fit under the door. Barnes tries to take a few matchsticks from it. At that moment, Reed re-enters, and they fear he might see them. The doorbell rings again, so he leaves once more. Jordan appears to have returned to ask Reed more questions, suspecting him. Reed quickly heads to the door, and Paxton notices the woman's head moving slightly, just as they had left it. This unnerves her, but Barnes insists they leave her as she is. Paxton pleads for them to help her, but they try to focus on their escape. They attempt to light the matchsticks by striking them against the wall. Meanwhile, Jordan asks Reed an important question about whether he has a book like the one he took from Paxton when they first arrived. Reed denies having such a book and promises to give it to Jordan to read. Jordan places the book down and leaves. Paxton and Barnes continue trying to light a matchstick. Paxton notices the woman moving from her spot, which heightens her fear. Barnes finally manages to light a matchstick, and as the light illuminates the room, they are horrified to see the strange woman standing right behind Paxton. The matchstick falls from their hands and extinguishes. The lady starts talking to them in strange, incomprehensible words. He leaves and tells her, "Thank you for going to the afterlife and returning." He informs her that he recorded her prophecy in the text of the rituals. He returns to Paxton and Barnes and sees them trying to light the match. He takes it from them, lights it easily, and asks them to recount their testimony of what happened with new precision so he can record it. He assures them that if they didn't see anything unfamiliar to them, they shouldn't speak. Barnes tries to object, but he pressures them. Paxton begins to say, "I saw the miracle when I returned from death." She said she met an angel and felt her soul separating from her body. Reed told her, "What do you think about experiencing being a miracle, dying and returning to life?" Barnes said, "I understand that you've been doing this since the beginning of the day to make our deaths happen at our own request." She confirms that what she saw wasn't a miracle. It was just a magic trick. This was the secret code between her and Paxton. She starts to get excited to leave, pulling an envelope from her pocket. She tries to discuss more with Barnes to distract him. After a while, Paxton makes a decision. She stands behind Reed and tries to stab him. She's shocked when he pulls something from his pocket and slits Barnes's throat. Paxton quickly escapes, trying to scream for help and break the door, but she fails. She returns to the room and sees Reed sitting beside Barnes's corpse, saying, "Come on, wake up." But he tells Paxton that it's clear something is wrong, and unfortunately, her colleague will not return to life. He cuts her arm where the old wound was and extracts a metal capsule. He tells Paxton that her colleague will not return to life because she is programmed and not real. She asks him to explain because she doesn't understand. He tries to convince her that her friend isn't real and won't return, but if she tries death, she will return because she is human. She tells him that the chip he extracted is just a tool for filling the load and has nothing to do with any programming. She tells him she doesn't believe in the miracles she saw about the prophecy or anything else. At first, she says she believes him, but later she doesn't because she suspects he tampered with the devices. She tells him that when the bell rang, he knew they would watch the door. When they returned, he was certain the woman wasn't in the same position they left her in. This was evidence that something else happened, and someone else sat in her place. They realized that the last thing the woman said when she claimed she returned from death was not real. It was an attempt to inform them that the miracle wasn't real. He told her this means the room must have a secret door. He tries to prove there are no doors or exits in the room, but she discovers that the water dripping from the ceiling has been falling for a long time, and the room hasn't filled with water. She moves the table and discovers the secret door beneath it. He tells her, based on her theory, there must be a corpse below to confirm her hypothesis. She decides to go down to find out the truth, and because it's the only exit, he tells her not to enter the room unless she's ready to discover the real religion. She decides to descend, and when she does, she finds a corpse and walks through the corridor leading from one door to another. The last door has a lock. She retrieves the key he left in his jacket pocket, opens it, and sees cages with sick-looking women imprisoned inside. She exits and asks him, "What is the true religion?" She tells him, "When we entered, you greeted us and left us alone, hiding our wheels so no one searching for us would find them. You deliberately left the keys in my pocket to prove I reached here because of your choice, not my decision to descend. All of this happened to convince me that religion is control." He tells her, "Exactly. Religion is a system of control." She hears the suffering of one of the women Reed imprisoned and tries to comfort her. He tells her, "She doesn't need your help because this is the place she chose." She tells him, "But you killed the woman who was with us." He says, "No, I didn't kill her. She chose to eat the poisoned pie." He points to one of the imprisoned women and deliberately cuts her finger. Paxton collapses and asks him, "Why are you doing this?" He tells her, "I do this because these are your choices. I predicted every decision you made today because I understand how you think." As he approaches her, she seizes the opportunity and stabs him in the neck, running quickly to the office room with the painting of the layers of hell from Dante's Divine Comedy. She opens the second door, which leads her back to the same room where she was with her colleague. Reed arrives and stabs her with the tool he has. He asks her to pray for him. She tells him, "Praying won't help now, but it's nice that you think of someone better than you and ask them to pray." She begins to pray. At that moment, Reed approaches her crying, and the miracle happens. Barnes rises and hits him on the head with a wooden stick, killing him. She loses consciousness again. Paxton escapes and tries to find the exit through the house model in Reed's office. She notices the house is built like a maze. In the end, she manages to escape through the window and calls the church for help. She notices the butterfly that was imprisoned with them in the house escaped with her. The movie ends. If you liked the video, subscribe to the channel and activate the notification button so you never miss an update.